SLT Speed Up සවාරිය සමගින් සද්දන්ත වාසි රැල්ලක්. අලුත් බ්‍රෝඩ්බෑන්ඩ් සබඳතා සඳහා පළමු මාස දෙක පුරා data double. Speed up with SLT.
Making headlines on First at 9. Election for democracy. President Maithripala tells Asian electoral stakeholders that elections will be duly held to uphold integrity. Elections Commission says Sri Lanka will be an example to region.
The event will culminate with the endorsement of a landmark document urging election stakeholders from within Asia and beyond to promote and defend democracy.
Regional development. Prime Minister Delimitation addresses 3rd Indian Ocean Conference in Hanoi, stresses the importance of the cooperation for regional growth.
Maritime Asia and the Indian Ocean region are central to the rise of multi-layered regionalism.
Limitations of delimitation. Provincial councils and local government ministers Faiza Mustafa has a solution to ongoing issues pertaining to holding provincial council elections.
You can't say it's a failure, this is democracy.
Questioning credibility. While Minister Malik Samarawikrama says $16 billion FDI under Singapore FTA to be finalized soon, Patriotic Professionals Forum questions size of investment.
We are very happy if investments are coming to the country, but the numbers the government is presenting is questionable.
Another Darusman report. United Nations report says that top military figures in Myanmar must be investigated for genocide in Rakhine State. A very good evening to you and welcome to First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7 Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. Now moving on to our top story tonight. President Maithripala emphasizes that the government is to ensure long-lasting democracy by holding free and fair elections in Sri Lanka. The President was speaking at the inauguration ceremony of the 4th Asian Electoral Stakeholder Forum, which was held in South Asia for the first time.
The inauguration ceremony of the 4th Asian Electoral Stakeholder Forum was held under the patronage of President Maithripala today. Organised by the Sri Lankan Election Commission and Asian Network for Free Elections, this year's forum is themed Advancing Election Transparency and Integrity, Promoting and Defending Democracy Together. Participants from 45 countries representing various election commissions, monitoring bodies, diplomatic missions are attending the two-day forum.
My political career spans across 51 years. I have won 6 parliamentary elections. I'm the 6th president of Sri Lanka. Executive presidency, introduced in 1978, was converted to one with autocratic powers in 2010. Through the 19th Amendment, I vested those powers with Parliament. Since 1982, there have been 6 presidential elections in the country. No presidential candidate went through the hardships that I did as a presidential candidate. They hurled stones at my campaign stages when I was delivering my speeches. That was the very first time in Sri Lanka when stones were pelted at a presidential election candidate when they were making their speeches on stage. My campaign stages were even burnt down. When opposition candidates were violating election laws back in 2015, the then Election Commissioner Mahinda Deshapriya gave clear instructions to the police saying they should aim and shoot at the head of any person who illegally touches ballot boxes on the day of the election. The Election Commission fulfilled its duties by being unbiased and fair to all. We want to ensure democracy in the country by holding fair and peaceful elections. During these 3.5 years, I have done all that I can to ensure democracy in the country.
The forum will hopefully demonstrate the transparency of the Sri Lankan electoral system to the world. That is the one most important thing. The event will culminate with the endorsement of a landmark document urging election stakeholders from within Asia and beyond to promote and defend democracy in the region. UNPRL and the Election Commission of Sri Lanka hope that through this document, the Colombo Pledge, cooperation and collaboration among election stakeholders will be revitalized in order to address declined quality of democracy in Asia. We all should collectively uphold the fact that democracy is not an option, it's a must.
Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government Faiza Mustafa says the 5-member committee headed by the Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has no mandate to decide whether the elections should be held under the old electoral system. He made this remark at a media briefing held in his ministry premises today.
The 5-member committee has no mandate to decide whether they should go back to the old system. Their terms of reference are very clear: to look into whatever grievances the public political parties have with regard to the delimitation report and make the appropriate changes and hand it over to His Excellency the President. You can't say it's a failure. This is democracy. When we took 3.5 years, 3 years to do the delimitation for the local government election, nobody said anything, no. What we have to do is all have to get together and expeditiously hold elections. Nothing is better than consensus. The whole basis was without going for a confrontational approach to see whether we could reach a consensus. That's why there were deliberations for 6 months.
The Socialist Alliance today heavily condemned the government's strategy to postpone the Provincial Council elections. Leader of the Socialist Alliance, Professor Derana, highlights that the subject minister himself voting against the delimitation report when in fact he had 5 months to make necessary revisions, well showcases the government's agenda.
The delay from March, when within 2 weeks that had to be presented in Parliament, it took place only in August. During that period, if the minister and the cabinet were of the opinion that the report was not satisfactory, because that is the result that one can conclude from the way they voted. The fact that the minister who presented the resolution himself voted against it. So did the other cabinet ministers. It is very clear, therefore, the minister and the cabinet could have made whatever revisions were necessary during that time and presented something that the cabinet would accept for approval by Parliament. But they didn't do that. And they vote against it. And further steps that are being outlined as necessary to be followed by the Speaker means a further 2 months delay at a minimum. And they can very well delay further. This would mean that the 6 provincial councils that elections have to be held in the course of this year or early next year will not be held. And it is clear that the government strategy is to delay the provincial council elections, delay if possible the general election, and try to have the presidential election as early as possible. This is a result of their fear of the people's vote, and they are ready to deprive the people of their vote which should be given in time. So we from the Socialist Alliance roundly condemn this course of action.
The defeated delimitation report has come under much scrutiny in the past few days. Ministers and parliamentarians expressed their views on the matter at various forums today as well.
It was not the minister's delimitation report that was presented in Parliament, but rather the recommendations put forth by a committee appointed by the President. Even the minister was not able to accept the delimitation report by the committee. Even I cannot accept it. We were not against the electoral system, but rather how the delimitation will be carried out. If the government is in disagreement, then what should have been done is to do away with the act altogether. This should not be taken for a joke. See how much time has been wasted because of debates. For one parliamentary debate, millions are being spent and the public are being taken for a ride. This process has not been abandoned. There is a committee headed by the Prime Minister and it is in its final stages. Within 2 months, concerns pertaining to the report should be rectified and presented. What I suggest is to complete this task within 2 weeks and complete it as soon as possible so we can hold elections. The subject minister should resign immediately because he worked in a manner that would put his country in jeopardy. You saw how they tried to experiment with the delimitation report, and the SLPP was with us by voting against it. If they wanted to hold provincial council elections, then they would have voted for this to pave way for elections. I see this as a defeat of the stance of the SLFP led by the President. Therefore, all those who are still in this faction should kindly break away from it. The Delimitation Committee has worked according to election laws. The reason why the report was rejected was due to political reasons. This is very evident. Parties in the government do not want to hold an election. On the other hand, those who are in the joint opposition who want to come into power believe that if they continue in an environment where there are no elections, then in a way it would benefit them.
ඔවුන්ට එහි දැවැන්ත දේශපාලන වාසියක් ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන් කියන එක.
With media reports emerging that the government has secured an investment of $16 billion to the country under the much debated Singapore-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement, the Patriotic Professionals Forum points out a serious mismatch in statistics while questioning the credibility of state statistics. Last month, the Board of Investment said Sri Lanka was gearing to reap benefits of the FTA with Singapore, with 4 mega projects under discussion for the Hambantota and Trincomalee areas. Subject Minister Malik Samaravikrama also confirmed to First at 9 today that matters pertaining to incentives for investments and release of land for the said projects are currently being discussed with the potential investors.
With an investment of $16 billion in the pipeline under the Sri Lanka-Singapore FTA, the biggest investment ever for Sri Lanka, we contacted Subject Minister Malik Samaravikrama on the progress of ongoing discussions. Minister Samaravikrama confirmed to First at 9 that the investments will be finalized within the next couple of months, and currently discussions are ongoing with potential investors regarding incentives while awaiting the release of land. In mid-July, the Board of Investment issued a statement noting that Sri Lanka was gearing to reap benefits of the Singapore FTA with 4 mega projects under discussion. According to the BOI, the projects with a total investment value of over $16 billion in manufacturing, mainly for exports, are the first projects under the Sri Lanka-Singapore FTA implemented on the 1st of May. The largest of these is an export-oriented oil refinery valued at $14.8 billion in Hambantota. The second, an investment of $1 billion in a steel manufacturing plant in Trincomalee. The other 2 projects, both in Hambantota for a $200 million sugar refinery and a $50 million flour mill, both for local and export markets. Meanwhile, commenting on the latest developments in FDI inflow to the country, however, convener of the Patriotic Professionals Forum, Dr. Nalaka Godehewa, questioned the credibility of the size of the investment as outlined by the government.
Given the lack of credibility of this government on the part of statistics, we have serious doubts about this statement. In rupee terms, it is about 2,600 billion rupees. If you look at Sri Lanka's national income in 2018, it is projected to be around 2,000 billion. So these 4 investments are going to be even bigger than the national income. If you look at the 5 largest investments of the previous government, they are nowhere near this 2,600 billion investments that are to come from Singapore. If you take Hambantota Port, it was 180 billion rupees. Southern Highway was 110 billion. Katnayaka Highway 50 billion. Mattala Airport 30 billion. And Noricchole Power Plant 120 billion. All put together about 490 billion. Now then one has to question, what are these investments which are going to bring 2,600 billion into the country? We are very happy if investments are coming to the country, but the numbers the government is presenting is questionable.
UPFA parliamentarian Pavitra Vanyarachi accuses leaders of both the UMP and the SLFP, claiming that they are in an attempt to postpone the Provincial Council elections. She made the remark at a media briefing held by the joint opposition today.
The Provincial Council election was postponed, claiming that it will be held under a new electoral system. Then once the report was presented to the Parliament, the entire Parliament, including the subject minister, voted against it. The government knows that both Prime Ministers and President's parties will be defeated in an election. Postponing elections has always been a habit of the UNP, but the SLFP never had such habits to violate democracy. Those are claiming to be leaders of the SLFP are part of the game to postpone elections. Prime Minister and President blame each other about the issue, but it is the general public which gets penalized because of it.
ආණ්ඩුව පිළිබඳව දැඩි ලෙස කලකිරුණු එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයේ කොටසක් ඉන්නවා. ඔවුන් සමග සාකච්ඡා කරේ නැත්නම් මේ ජනබලය කොළඹට මෙහෙමට සහයෝගය ලබනවා. සමහරු සමග සාකච්ඡා කරමින් යනවා.
We are discussing with certain UNP members. We are also under discussions as to whether to publicly address all of the issues we have on the 5th of September itself.
තාම අභ්‍යන්තර සාකච්ඡාවක් පවතිනවා.
මේ නොකිය කියන්නේ පස්වෙනිදා එක්සත් ජාතික පක්ෂයේ කණ්ඩායමක් උඹලා සමග එක්වෙනවා කියලාද?
පක්ෂ නායක රැස්වීමකුත් 28 වෙනිදාට තියෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ තමයි අපි ඒක තීන්දුව කරන්නේ.
This isn't guerrilla marketing. It's much similar to how we did things during the war. Our soldiers won the war by getting inside information of the LTTE by being among them. The group of 16 is also acting just as how our soldiers did back then.
Special Presidential Commission to review the public sector salaries held its first meeting today. Chaired by President Maithripala Sirisena, the meeting took place at the Presidential Secretariat in Colombo.
Following the recent strike by railway trade unions, President Maithripala Sirisena appointed the Special Commission to review public sector salaries with the objective to make recommendations to minimize salary anomalies in the sector. Appointment of the commission was made as per a decision taken at the cabinet meeting on the 14th of August this year. During the first meeting today, appointment letters were presented to its 15 members headed by S. Ranugge. Duties and regulations of the Commission include proposing a systematic approach to solve issues after providing the proposed salary scale to the Supervisory Management Service of Railway Department, provide recommendations to reduce any anomalies in the current circular of the salary scales related to railway services, and to also provide recommendations to reduce salary scale variations emerged within all public services. President Maithripala Sirisena instructed the Commission members to submit their recommendations before the 30th of October this year.
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe today addressed the inaugural session of the Indian Ocean Conference in Hanoi, Vietnam. Themed Building Regional Architectures, the conference aims at promoting strategic cooperation and trade ties between countries, consolidating security frameworks and administrative processes, as well as contributing to maintaining regional peace, stability, development and connectivity. Addressing the conference, Prime Minister highlighted the importance and the role of the Maritime Asia and Indian Ocean region.
We are seeing a pushback against globalization. Trade tensions between economic giants pose significant risk to global trade. The challenges facing the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the renegotiation on NAFTA, the Brexit negotiation, name but a few. The question is, are these signs of a retreat from a closer integration? Globalization and closer economic integration has helped countries across the globe to develop and prosper. Without such integration and market access, it would be difficult for a small nation like my own, which flow open market policies, to survive. There is an abiding interest in maintaining the safety and security of the sea lanes of communication. In the ocean space, you see force posture, build-up of naval and air facilities, and the establishment of military bases. The expansion of military presence of major and middle powers in the ocean space highlights the centrality of the oceans to future development. With such development, these players stand poised to take advantage of strategic opportunities or step into any perceived power vacuums. The multipolar world of the future would be anchored by multi-layered regionalism and be built on common understandings, alliances and institutions that are currently taking shape. Maritime Asia and the Indian Ocean region are central to the rise of multi-layered regionalism. Peace and stability in the Indian Ocean region is our mutual interest. This region has enormous economic potential and is the lifeline of global trade.
A 12-year-old child was killed and 37 others sustained injuries when a Sri Lanka transport bus went down a precipice in Badulla this morning. According to the incident took place at around 8:10 a.m. at the Alugul area when the bus was flying from Badulla to Kande Gedara. The driver of the bus was trapped inside and had to be removed by police and residents in the area. According to police, the bus had carried around 40 passengers at the time of the incident. Residents of the area had rushed the injured persons, including a pregnant mother, to the Badulla General Hospital. According to police media spokesperson's office, the tragedy led to the careless driving of the driver. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka Transport Board Chairman Rama Sirivardhana had ordered for a special investigations to be carried into the incident. Notices issued to 7 individuals, including former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa, to appear before the newly set up Special High Court on the 10th of September in connection to the alleged misuse of funds in the construction of the D.A. Rajapaksa Memorial Museum. Let's have a look at some of the stories making news across Sri Lanka.
The Min Area National Park has been temporarily closed down following a clash between the wildlife officers and a group of fishermen in the area last night. 6 officers of Min Area National Park attached to Wildlife Conservation Department were admitted to the Habarana Hospital for treatment after the incident. 4 of them had been discharged today after treatments. Police said that 2 suspects are arrested over the assault. However, the fishermen engaging in a protest at the 13th mile post junction at Habarana this noon claimed that they did not attack the officials. A 31-year-old woman was shot dead at the Jumma junction in Maligavatta around 6 p.m. yesterday. Police said that 2 unidentified gunmen on a motorbike had opened fire at the victim. She succumbed to her injuries after being admitted to the Colombo National Hospital, and she was identified as the wife of accomplice of underworld figure Mankandure Madush. Former Army Commander General Rohan Daluwatta passed away at the age of 77 today. Daluwatta joined the Sri Lanka Army in 1961 as an officer cadet, and he was appointed as 14th Army Commander in 1996. As commander, Daluwatta led the Operation Rivirasa against the LTTE cadres. After his retirement, he was promoted to the rank of general and was appointed as the head of the newly formed Joint Operations Command and later as the Chief of Defence Staff.
Let's now cross over to a short commercial break and join with business news on the other side.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Chairperson of the Export Development Board, Indira Malwatta, says that Sri Lanka's ITBPM industry was able to achieve $1.2 billion in revenue last year, posting a growth of 300%. Speaking to media, she added that in this backdrop, undergraduates and diploma holders should venture into startups as a way of encouraging entrepreneurship. A media briefing to announce the launch of Southern ITBPM Week in Mathura on the 4th and 5th of next month was held in Colombo today. The event aims to share knowledge and expertise on latest technological trends and for over 200 school principals and ICT teachers from schools in the Galle district.
Now, we have given a challenge to our friends of industry that we should be able to achieve by 2022 a 5 billion worth of exports, because last year I think you all recorded a 1.2 billion of exports. If you see the data, now 2017 they have achieved 1.2 billion, which is a growth of almost 300% for the last 10 years. And they have also employed over 80,000 professionals, because we are looking at the undergraduates also. And we firmly believe that undergraduates should not be depending entirely on government jobs, that there's an opportunity for them open there to have their own startups, because another objective of this is to get 1,000 startups moving. And in fact, in the last budget, they have allocated money under the Aramuma credit scheme for young university startups and also people with diplomas having the higher education diploma to getting their ideas forward. And we have to nurture them.
Sri Lankan shares ended weaker today to post their 10th declining session in 11 as worries over new tax proposals weighed on investors' sentiment. The Colombo Stock Index ended 0.14% lower at 6,044.14. We have Amanda Lokugamage from First Capital Holdings with a detailed report.
All share price index had a volatile movement throughout the day, recording an intraday low of 6,043 prior to closing the day at 6,044, losing 9 points. Both turnover and volume had improved compared to Friday's market. The net foreign inflow was witnessed for the third consecutive day with low foreign participation.
The Sri Lankan rupee hit a record low of 161 rupees and 10 cents per dollar today, dragged down by importer dollar demand and less inflows of the greenback. The rupee closed at 161 rupees and 5 cents per dollar, compared with Friday's close of 160 rupees and 85 cents to 161 rupees. With that, let's take a look at the day's foreign exchange rates. A United Nations report has said that top military figures in Myanmar must be investigated for genocide in Rakhine State and crimes against humanity in other areas. It is compiled by a panel led by former Indonesian Attorney General Marzuki Darusman, who also led the UN Secretary General's panel of experts on accountability in Sri Lanka back in 2011. This latest UN report on Myanmar is the strongest condemnation from the UN so far regarding the Rohingya crisis, which is under much international scrutiny.
The United Nations Independent International Fact-Finding Mission on Myanmar, led by former Indonesian Attorney General Marzuki Darusman, said Myanmar's military carried out mass killings and gang rapes of Muslim Rohingya with genocidal intent. The panel insisted that Myanmar's commander-in-chief and 5 generals should be prosecuted for orchestrating the gravest crimes under law. It is also fiercely critical of Nobel Peace Prize laureate de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi. They say the government led by Suu Kyi has contributed to the commission of atrocity crimes by allowing hate speech to thrive, destroying documents and failing to protect minorities from crimes against humanity and war crimes by the army in Rakhine, Kharkiv and Shan states. The panel had interviewed 875 victims and witnesses in Bangladesh and other countries. The 20-page final report recommends the case be referred to the International Criminal Court or for an ad hoc tribunal to be created to investigate the actions of the alleged perpetrators. Last August, Myanmar's military launched a crackdown after militants of Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army attacked police posts, killing several policemen. Hundreds of thousands of Rohingya Muslims started fleeing across the border into Bangladesh, into what's since become the world's biggest refugee camp. According to MSF, at least 6,700 Rohingya, including at least 730 children under the age of 5, were killed in the first month after the violence broke out.
US sanctions against Russia in relation to the recent nerve agent attack in Britain came into effect today. Ahead of the sanctions, Russia's foreign ministry emphasized that these new sanctions will only create more tension between the two countries.
New sanctions by the United States against Russia will terminate foreign assistance, some arms sales and financing to Russia, as well as deny the country credit and prohibit the exports of security-sensitive goods and technology. However, spaceflight activities, government space cooperation, areas concerning commercial aviation safety and urgent humanitarian assistance will be exempt under the new measures. Although US President Donald Trump has often voiced interest to have better ties with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin, Washington's relations with Moscow are at low. US allegations regarding Russia's interference in its 2016 presidential election, disagreements over Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea and its role in the Syrian civil war are known contributory factors to the rift between the two nations. Plans to impose the latest sanctions were announced by the Trump administration on August 8th as response to Moscow's use of a nerve agent against a former Russian agent and his daughter in Britain in March. Washington showed solidarity with Britain and announced it would expel 60 Russian diplomats, joining governments across Europe in punishing the Kremlin. Moscow has denied involvement in the attack.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
On to your weather forecast for the next 24 hours now. Temperatures are to vary between 20 and 35 degrees Celsius, with the highest temperature expected to be recorded in Batticaloa with 35 degrees Celsius. Now, most parts of the island will experience showers except for the districts of Jaffna, Mannar and Colombo, as well as Galle. Meanwhile, fairly strong gusty winds of up to 40 kilometers to 50 kilometers per hour can be expected in Hambantota district. With that, let's take a look at your city-by-city forecast. And before we go tonight, we'd like to take you to Kandy, where the final Randoli procession of the world-renowned as the procession of the Temple of the Sacred Tooth Relic was held. The religious and cultural spectacle marked its conclusion for this year yesterday. We hope you enjoy these visuals and have a pleasant evening.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.